Well, hey everyone, happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John, who were up top with their blue shirts today.
Yes.
I didn't get the memo. I am wearing like an olive green color. So, here we are. Someone's
Just a random
got to be
thing.
someone's got to be the odd man out. Might as well be me. This week, we have talked about it on the podcast. We have talked about it in the newsletter. And today we are going to show how AI detectors work. So this came about because last week, we had a very strong response to our newsletter that it was AI slop, that it was written by AI, that we were liars about our use of AI. And so we can't say for sure that the person who responded used an AI detector, but timing wise, Substack and Panagram have released. So Substack is using Panagram, and then Panagram is an AI detector. I'm putting this in big, big, big air quotes. I got to get my red flag ready too. Sorry, I forgot about that. They are using tools that allegedly can detect AI written content. But here's the challenge. These large language models are trained on human written content. And now it's telling us that the content that we've written that we didn't consent for them to be trained on is AI written content, which is a whole maybe other ethical topic for another day. But today, we are going to walk through how to use an AI detector, maybe how to build an AI detector. But before we get into all that technical stuff, John, what are your thoughts on AI written content? Like, do you care? Does it matter? Are you out to like see, is this written by AI or not? Like, where do you stand on this topic?
Yeah, that's a good question just in general. And yeah, I don't really care about AI topics, and AI writing. That's really the first thing because it's most of the time people are using AI to generate slop, like they want to write some kind of article and it's just going to grab whatever's out there on the web and process it.
Mhm.
So, if somebody just does something with AI and throws it out there as, hey, here's my new thing, that's of no interest usually ever. Where it's of huge interest is if you're working on something and you want it to go out there and grab everything that's out there and put it in a presentable form to you so you can learn what's going on and figure things out. That's fantastically useful. It's basically the promise of search that we got stolen from us and got bastardized by marketing and destroyed. So there is great things that can be done with it. And then there's this weird thing of all the AI generated stuff is here, but now unique and novel research or stuff that's original or created is at a whole nother level. And in fact, just this week, we've been seeing stuff as far as, saying that, hey, this is made without AI is actually some marketing credibility and, shows either luxury or a brand above the general public. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and I don't know, we've seen a lot of stuff with AI detectors. Last I heard this was all garbage. So I'm interested to hear where we're going today and, what the state of the world is today.
Well, and I do find it interesting that, and it's, marketers to the rescue to, rebrand things. So, you know, 100% human written content, no AI used is now like, a something sought after when for how many years that was just how it was. Like,
Automate
and
everything.
now it's like,
Right? So,
now you can just slap a label on it and be like 100% human. It's like, wow. I mean, okay. I don't know. The whole thing is very bizarre to me. So, Chris, we're gonna turn it over to you and figure out where the heck are we gonna get started? Like, what's the deal with these AI detectors?
So with AI detectors, the vast majority of them today use an AI model that is custom tuned to look for specific patterns. And the specific pattern they look for the most is the probability of the next word in the sequence. And if too many words in a row are expected, then it's going to say that this is probably AI. So I'll give you an example. If I say to a North American audience, I pledge allegiance to what's the next logical word?
the flag.
Flag. Right, exactly. Flag. Almost 100% probability that word is going to be flag. Almost 0% is going to be rutabaga, right? Like no one pledges allegiance to a rutabaga. If you do, leave a note in the comments.
They might.
They might after today. So if an AI model is looking at a word sequence and it it looks at the next word and it sees the word rutabaga. It's like, well, that's weird. And that's a very low, that's not what I would have expected there. That's probably human written because it's so low probability.
But here's the challenge there. There's a lot of very uncreative writers, especially when you get into things like, tech writers. The probability of the next word being whatever it is going to be very high because there's only so many ways to talk about a certain thing. Like, the sun is bright, the sun is yellow, the sun is shining. Like, there's a very basic example, but to come up with some sort of like very flowery analogy of what the sun looks like, that person is likely not using AI in the first place. But for the majority of people who are like, I need to describe the sun, let me say the things that I know about it, it's going to be a very uncreative, very like that basic pattern matching, but they wrote it. But now it's going to get flagged as AI. Like, I think about like the students in school where they're just trying to get through the assignment. So they're just like, what do I have to say about the sun? The sun is in the sky. The sun is blindingly bright. I need sunglasses when it's sunny. Like, we're all going to say that. And I think that like, again, very basic example, but like that to me is like hugely problematic because, again, it's trained on the way that we talk and write. So therefore, how could it be like, oh, well, if that's the pattern, then it must be AI written, even though I was trained that this was how humans write and speak.
Right. And so everybody starts with a base model of some kind, and then every company that claims to offer an AI detector has to custom tune the model or the software around it to say, this is what we think is and is not AI written. And we know this because AI models in particular have what we call tells, right? There are some constructions that they overuse. Example, negative parallelism is a very common tell for both ChatGPT and Claude. It's not this, it's this. It's not the depth of attribution. It's the arousal of multi-touch attribution, right? You've seen that construction a lot. Very human construction used a lot. That's one of the, but what AI tends to do is tends to overuse it. Another one is triadic rhythm. Triadic rhythm is the things that come in triplets. Maybe it went well. Maybe it stalled. Maybe it never started, right? Boom, boom, boom. That kind of triplet sequence. Claude in particular loves triadic rhythm. Don't know why, except, it's obviously been trained on that material, but you see that, and it does that a lot. Claude and ChatGPT both like passive voice starters. So they will say something like and you'll see this in LinkedIn comments, especially. The issue wasn't that. Like, it was like, and then it goes on to say like a bunch of other foaming at the mouth, but it will start with a passive voice starter that doesn't really say anything. It's just kind of a restatement. One of the best ways to look for AI generated text, believe it or not, especially in places like LinkedIn, is in the comments at a profile level, because what you see in LinkedIn especially is you don't just see individual pieces, you see patterns, and the patterns, to use a Claudism, the pattern is the tell. So let me show here's an example. Without looking too hard at this, do you see just the general text shape of the sentences is the same? Shorter first line, longer second line, shorter third line. And I'll make it bigger, but I want you to look at the shape of the words as like just colored lines. You can see just how formulaic it is. The AI audit only works if it knows whose eyes are being messaged. This amendment moved the scope boundary, not just the compliance case. The most telling choice in the playbook is this, where agents sit, right? It's when you look at the pattern, you can tell this is a bot because it is generating the same format over and over and over again.
I see.
The underlying language model is varying up the words. So early AI detectors used static features like how long is the sentence, how long, how many nouns are in the sentence and stuff. Almost no company uses that anymore because the false accusation rates were very high on those. Today's AI detectors use language models. The false accusation rate is lower, but still not zero, and zero is the only acceptable rate with using for anything punitive. It's one of the things we've been saying now for 3 years. Like, you must never, ever, ever use an AI detector for anything that's punitive, because they still have false accusation rates. And if you're talking about ending someone's tenure, or they're kicking them out of school or disciplining them, the tools cannot falsely accuse someone.
Well, and it's funny because, you're talking about like the shape of the content that is, whereas I looked at that and I was like, oh, it's written by AI because it's utter nonsense. Like, it's not actually a coherent sentence. It looks like a structured sentence, but when you actually read the words, like, the audit only applies to the eyes reading it. Like, that's not actually a sentence that a human would write because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't mean anything. And someone who does probably doesn't make sense in real life.
Mhm. Now, to your point earlier, AI detectors especially penalize non-English speakers.
Mhm.
It penalizes people who are neurodivergent, who write in ways that are not normal, aka boring. It penalizes highly templated text. So anyone who remembers school, especially in the last 20 years, remembers the joy of the 5-paragraph essay,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Uh-huh.
The 5-paragraph essay with all, you say what the paper's about. You have 3 papers of exposition. You have the third paragraph of conclusion, which restates the key point. You have transition sentences at the beginning and end of every paragraph. At that point, you may as well just have ChatGPT write it for you, and a lot of students are. But that formulaic template
Mhm.
is going to get flagged as AI because it is so strict that
Yeah.
it also doesn't teach you how to write.
Oh, man, I remember. Yeah, like, yellow paper, green lines on your pencil. It's like paragraph 1 is the argument. Paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 support it. Paragraph 5 is your conclusion, which has to tie back. It's almost like the 5P framework.
Uh-huh. And so there are some definite tells for that AI uses that even humans are very, very skilled at identifying. Especially, Katie, as you point out, it's words. It's a sentence shaped object, but boy, does it not say anything.
Mm-mm. If you bring that LinkedIn example back up again, um,
Let me zoom in here. Fit to
thank you.
screen. There you go.
The audit only works if it knows whose eyes are reading the message. That doesn't mean anything. The amendment moved the scope boundary, not just the compliance dates. That one, if you squint, almost makes sense. But like, there's no reason for someone to frame these sentences that way. So that to me immediately sticks out as, well, AI is doing its best to sound like a competent human, but it is failing.
Yes. And what these bots in particular do is they take the original post and then they essentially wash it through a prompt to generate a templated response. And the bots themselves, if you wanted to go buy these bots or just make one yourself, they're not terribly difficult to make. And so this kind of goes to why you would use an AI detector. If people use them, there are some valid use cases. We talked about this on the podcast, but one is a person attempting to deceive me through the use of AI, particularly with things like image generation, video generation, etc., to deep fake something to show that you are alive and well when in fact you're dead. Anything along those lines is deception based. So you use an AI detector to say, like, is this fake? For things in academia, which is very dangerous, things like academic honesty, academic integrity, like, did you actually do this work? And that's a whole other topic. And then, of course, there's the social aspect, which is, does the use or not use of AI confer some form of social status on the person?
Hmm.
There are a lot of people, like the person who wrote in last week, who maybe need to feel better about themselves by yelling at other people who they think are using AI.
That's all I
Now,
have to say about that.
exactly. One of the things about the different patterns is that you can give a language model a list of these patterns and say, these are anti-patterns to not use in your work, and give it a scoring rubric and say, you're going to generate a piece of text, then go through it for these obvious patterns and knock them out.
Mhm.
And they can do that. In fact, separately in the Trust Insights Google Drive, we actually have one of these that, Katie, I've been meaning to tell you exists. I made it last week.
I appreciate that. I always love learning something new on these shows.
At least it's not being demonstrated live, right? This is the we're at.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Sean.
Exactly. So how do these things work? The first thing you need to do is you need to have a language model that will return a specific metric. And the metric is called log of probabilities. And this is that guess of, in the next word in this sequence, what are the most probable words, right? So God save the is going to be king or queen, probably not rutabaga. And
It is now.
it is now. So you have the base language model. Every company that builds one of these things has to figure out what model they're going to use that is a balance of intelligent and fast. And we talked about, in fact, we have a paper up on Zenodo from December talking about like how Llama 3.2, which is a very fast model made by Meta, is also absurdly biased. I actually ran it recently through a test called BBQ, which is bias built into queries. It's an AI bias test, and Meta's models fail 50% of the time. They're given a multiple choice test, like, Korean, you're talking to a Korean person, and then it gives like 3 answers that are clearly racist and 1 answer that's not. And the test measures, does it pick a racist answer? And Meta's models fail half the time. Like, oh, you must smell like garlic before you shower. Like, no.
We will put a link to that paper in our free Slack community. If you don't already have it, that's trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. Free to join. We will put a link to that research paper in that Slack community.
Yep. So you need a model to start with. You need a server that can serve it up very, very quickly, because these things are very compute intensive. So again, it's picking the best blend of speed and power. And then, and this is the part that every AI company does differently, you need a training corpus, because you have to demonstrate to these tools and build benchmarks internally of what is and is not AI. The tools themselves can't know that. You have to clearly demonstrate to them and help them build internal scoring mechanisms using the base model to say, this is AI, this is not AI. So I was doing this for a different project. And what I did for this was, there are some folks that we know and know and love on LinkedIn who very, very adamantly do not use AI. For example, our friend Ann Handley does not use AI. So I grabbed some of her LinkedIn posts. Our friend Jay Akunzo is rabidly anti-AI. I grabbed some of his posts. I know my own posts that I don't use AI in any fashion for them. And I put them in here. And then I took those topics that we all are all writing about, and I've then fed them into Claude, ChatGPT, Meta, Perplexity, Qwen, Gemini, and Copilot, and had them take the general topic and write a post write a synthetic LinkedIn post for each of the topics that these folks are writing about. That pairs kind of one-to-one. So Chris wrote this thing about authenticity, and then here's the ChatGPT version, here's the Gemini version, so on and so forth. So that when we start the model training, we can say, this is what human looks like, and this is what machine looks like.
Okay.
Once you get the model training underway, this will take you a couple of days to process. And your computer's fans will be spinning at 100% for a while. Now, a lot of these companies, of course, are renting compute from AWS or Google or what have you. I did not feel like spending Trust Insights money on that level of compute, so I just did it on my MacBook.
We appreciate that. Yeah, we do. We appreciate that. The CFO thanks you.
Exactly. And then the last part is you test it. Now, what's interesting is I also have my friend Becca's posts in here, and hers kept getting flagged as AI, even though she as a human wrote them. I was like, what's going on here? And I talked to her about it, and she's like, oh, what I do is I dictate all of my post, and then Claude fixes it up into a post. And I said, that's the problem, because when an AI tool edits,
Yeah.
It rearranges the words back into a statistically probable pattern. The example I give is Yoda said, "For 800 years have I trained Jedi. My own counsel will I keep on who is to be trained." AI would rewrite that as, "I have trained Jedi for 800 years. I will keep my own counsel on who is to be trained." Same exact words, but in a much more probable word order. The second version is going to get flagged because it's probable. The first version is truly Yoda. So you now have a base model. And by the way, this is why there's so much confusion in the space, because every one of these companies, Pangram, Originality, GPT-0, Winston, all these companies each have their own base model that they don't disclose. So we don't know what the underlying model is. And then they have their own training libraries on top of it, which again, we don't know whether they are. For my tests, I used a model called Skyfall. Skyfall is a model made by Beaver AI that is an upsample of Mistral, which is a French model. Skyfall is specifically tuned for writing. It is a writing model. It's meant to mostly to write fiction, but it is equally good at nonfiction, but it is specially tuned for writing. So I started with a model that was made for writing, and then I built the classifier on top of that. And so what we end up with is something that runs on a laptop. And now let's go and get something from this week's newsletter. So I'll put Katie's part of Katie's thing in here. Now, what this will do is it will go into the Skyfall model. It'll feed every single word to it, and then it will color code the words by green being, wow, that was an unexpected word, or red, yeah, I expected that word. And you can see the overall document scores. If this was fiction, it would score a 0, meaning definitely not AI. It scores probably not AI on nonfiction, because the training corpuses change. So if a company is selling, say, specifically to academia, they might have trained their model just on papers and school papers and stuff. If a company is selling to, LinkedIn, to social media managers, they might have trained on social media content. And then for each word, we can see the probabilities. So here, as Katie's talked about the 5 Ps, people, who, 86% predictable. And then it shows you what the other possibilities were there, likely to be there. And what you would be looking for are longer runs of clearly generated AI content, where it's like, okay, wow, this thing is 100% synthetic. So if I go back to my input folder, let me get that post on empathy that Quen wrote, start a new visualization, paste this in. This one for nonfiction, which it is, definitely AI. And you can see there are lots and lots of red runs throughout it. This thing there's very little surprise in this thing. Even though it was told right like a real person, it has a hard time doing that. And you will see large clusters. And what you're looking for are clusters not just on a line, but in a group. Like there's a blob here that is just all bright red. And so for this particular detector, it says, yeah, this is definitely AI.
It's interesting. I appreciate that it thinks that my writing is probably not AI. I would actually, and I'll share this with you in Slack, but I'm going to share with you a snippet of the unedited draft of that particular newsletter. Because again, like, it makes sense that it's going to flag when I start writing about the 5 Ps, because guess what? I write it, that always comes out the same way every single time. So let me just share. I'm going to post this for you. Sorry for those who are like, wait, I want to see it too. No, it's terrible. All right, it's in our podcasting channel, Chris. Because I'm curious to see the difference, because I did disclose in that newsletter that I used AI support to help me clean up my writing. But my first draft of my writing, like a lot of people, is generally pretty rough.
And you can see here, this one came out definitely not AI. The perplexity level, the surprise level is much, much lower. It's half of what it was. And the other one, because again, you can see there's a lot more green, and there are none of those big red blobs just floating around. The green is interspersed heavily throughout. And so when it comes to, if you want to avoid being flagged for AI, the rough cut is actually better from that perspective, because an AI detector is going to go, wow, this is clearly not. Even if, and this is the important part about these things, even if it makes absolutely no sense and is hot garbage. I'm not saying your stuff is, Katie, but I'm saying in general, if you were just to write hot garbage and put it in, it will say definitely not AI, and everyone else is like, this sucks.
Well, and there's the conundrum that people find themselves in, is I could publish my raw writing unedited just to save face, to be like, there's no way AI wrote this. And people are like, yeah, there's no way that anyone can read this either. So it is no longer useful. And so I feel like, and that's the conundrum people find themselves in, is like they want to publish polished, engaging, educational, entertaining, the 3 E's, though that kind of content. And this is what I talk about in the newsletter, is like some people use a human editor to get them there. So, for a long time, John, you were my human editor and the one who would go through my content to make sure it was coherent. And then I was able to transition to using these AI assisted tools. The process is the same. Somebody still needs to go through my writing and make sure it's coherent. Now, the difference too, and I understand what you're saying, Chris, John wouldn't go through my writing and start rearranging sentences for me. He would make sure that things were grammatically correct, that the sentences themselves were coherent, but he didn't take that next step and rearrange things. And that is a big difference with these AI editing tools as they're trying to be helpful. And that, I would imagine, once you're aware that that's happening, is something that you can set the system instructions to be like, don't do that. Like, don't rearrange things. Like, here's as far as you're allowed to take editing. When we were still using Gemini more heavily, and I was using it to edit posts, I would say, do not change anything. Just give me a list of what you think the changes should be, and I will make those decisions. And I feel like a lot of people have moved away from doing even just that layer of work to like, "Yeah, you know what, you just do it for me. It's so much easier."
Yep. One of the easiest things you can do to preserve your voice is, if you're going to have AI rearrange something, say, you must operate only at the sentence level. You may rearrange the order of my sentences, but you may not reconstruct or edit the sentences themselves. And because what you're doing is you're preserving the word order in sentences. For 800 years have I trained Jedi, right? Would remain an intact sentence. Even if it gets moved around, that construction gets moved. This is another example. This is a fiction example from where is this from? Oh, this is from an ebook that I keep messing around for Katie. That I'll eventually give to Katie. She's seen the first draft, like it sucked. But you can see here, this one scored a perfect score. This is 100% AI, and nonfiction, it also scored very, very high. And you can see this is just a sea of red. There are very, very few green words throughout here. And this is definitely 100% machine generated. Now, here is the problem with these detectors. Whose data were you training? Was the detector trained on? How is that data selected? How is it generated? And was the data representative? So if I were to say, take the writing samples from a Korean American students prep school for new immigrants, and all the students were writing completely unassisted with AI, the English on that's not going to be great. Is data like that in the model of this is human writing? It's problematic writing because these are non-English speakers who are, like second year English students, so they can't really create good English yet. But it's 100% human. Is that reflected in the model? And the chances are the answer is no. What typically models are trained on is they're trained on the easiest information available, and that tends to skew wealthy. That tends to skew whatever the ethnic majority is in the corpus of the data set. It tends to skew more educated, and so people outside those communities, they get flagged more.
So here's a question, and this is something, that we talk about on and off. So, the 5P book. And so you've assembled a version of the 5P book using AI. And my pushback was, well, I don't want to publish a book that was written with AI. And you rightly pushed back and said, no, it just assembled all of the different ways that you, the human, have written about it. So I guess, and that's where, it's like, well, where is that line? So like I've written enough about the 5P framework, so much so that I could probably have 2 books by now. But I'm hesitant to use AI to assemble all the pieces. In my brain, I'm like, "No, I have to start from scratch. I have to sit down and slowly type out everything I know about the 5 Ps when I've already done the work. I've already written it." And so, if someone were to then put the 5P book through an AI detector, it's likely gonna get flagged. But at the end of the day, like, I wrote it, I created it. And so, like, I guess that's what I'm struggling with why do you even care? Did it help you? And so maybe, and I think this is what we were talking about on the podcast. If you want to catch that episode, you can go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. But do people care about the right thing when it comes to AI detection?
Well, and here's the thing. AI detectors detect a mathematical assessment. It's a statistical assessment. They do not detect for quality. They do not detect for something being educational or entertaining or helpful.
Mhm.
They only detect the likelihood of word order within a corpus of text. Now, if you are a person, and there's valid reasons for this. We talked about this on the podcast. You have valid reasons for despising AI, right? The companies running them are ethically swamps. The machinery itself is incredibly resource intensive for electricity and power and water. The data they were trained on was not ethically sourced, right?
Mhm.
There's a whole thing in the news right now about an AI company that just shreds books as it scans them, which you don't have to do. If you object to the use of AI on those philosophical and moral grounds, then yes, it is going to matter to you whether AI touches book or not, because the mechanisms, the machinery that is used, you object to the use of that machine at all, right? It's like saying, I object to the use of a gasoline-powered thing in the harvesting of my produce. I want my produce to be only human harvested, even though that will give you diarrhea lettuce. As a result,
Dang it. Saw that coming.
But if you have those moral objections, then yes, it very much matters. If on the other hand, you're like, is this book going to help me save money, save time, make money? Then it will matter less as long as the underlying source material is good. AI can still make a mess of things. It can still hallucinate, especially if you start exceeding the context window. But a percentage of the audience will say, like, if this unethical, what they perceive as immoral or unethical machinery, I will not touch it.
And that totally makes sense. And I guess it's hard too, because like, I developed the 5P framework. I created the 5P framework, and there's so much content written about it now that in some ways it's almost silly not to use AI to summarize and, pull together everything I've written to make it make sense, like in one cohesive story. But then that then becomes the output of like, okay, but it was generated by AI. So Katie didn't do this at all. And I guess that's my question is like, if I go back, maybe I've answered my own question. If I go back then with the AI version and then, rewrite sections, make sure it's more human, I guess it doesn't really matter, but it might still get flagged. And to where you were talking about where you can't use these AI detection tools to discredit someone credibly, people are going to try to do that anyway.
Right. There are 2 ways I would handle that. Number one is, if you assemble the whole corpus of everything you've ever written about the 5 Ps, and that gets put into a database and is broken up at the paragraph level, one of the things that you would do is you would work with AI to develop the skeleton of the book, right? Logically, it's probably going to be the 5 Ps. And then say, in the database, this paragraph is a purpose paragraph. This is a people paragraph. This is a process paragraph, or whatever. And from that, you could assemble then and tag, these are all the paragraphs about this, and then have AI say, just select the sentences from each of these paragraphs that make the most logical book out of the 82 1,000 paragraphs you've written about purpose, right? You will be able to cobble together something in your exact word order at the sentence level that is reflective of your writing, particularly any writing before 2023, which is when ChatGPT stuff started really becoming prominent. Because you've been working on the 5P since 2020. That would be one way of doing that. But the other way of doing that is, and this is where you start getting into very, very tricky territory, is there are 40 some odd different text metrics that you can use to take a known sample of your exact writing style when it's known good, and you give that to an AI tool as a benchmark, and you say, you must meet these scores, rewrite until you do. And what happens when you do that is you basically invalidate the AI detector. It can no longer detect that it's AI because you've got a mechanism in place that mathematically defeats surprisal measures.
All to say that AI detectors are a big red flag.
AI detectors are a big red flag. Well, AI detectors are problematic to some degree, but how people use them, their purpose in the 5Ps, is the real red flag.
That makes sense. What do you think, Johnny? You going to start using AI detectors to detect everyone and call them out?
Right. Yeah. That's unless you're going on some kind of crusade and you have a reason to kill it. No, it's because, it all comes down to, is the writing or the copy or whatever useful to you? And, a lot of the time, I mean, I guess it would be a good thing for a screening algorithm. You could run it through and say, hey, anything that comes up mostly AI automated, don't bother showing me that. Show me the original stuff first. But yeah, the thing that is clear to me is that there's a spectrum. I mean, it comes to the point where you absolutely cannot ever say definitively something is or is not, because you just have a score. And, it can be very probable, 99% probable, but even in those situations, you can't definitively say we, know for sure that this is or isn't.
Yeah. Again, there is definitely, in the same way that you have things like organic or artisanal, small batch crafted, whatever, there is going to be a market for people who are like, yeah, I want something that has 0% AI, never touched it, was never part of it. There will be a market for that. And if that is your market or that is your customer, double down on it, right? It's going to take you longer to create stuff than it's someone who's using AI, but double down on it. Our big thing as a company, as Trust Insights, is it follows our RAFT responsible AI framework. And the big thing there is transparency. It would just say, if you use AI, disclose it, right? Disclose how you used it. And one of the things that, for example, I do with my books now is in the deluxe edition, you get the rough audio recordings of me yelling at people as I'm driving down the highway and stuff, so that you can say, yes, okay, I clearly see chapter 2 came from this recording, laced with profanity. Chris, you're like, get the hell out of the way, you idiot! You're in the left lane going 50 miles an hour, right? As I record the book along on my drives, you can get that provenance and lineage. I consider it an upsell. Like, here, you can have this, and here's the edited version that actually makes sense. That absolutely 100% used AI. Where I and a lot of other people have a problem is if you say something is yours and it isn't, right? Because that's the heart of academic integrity, is you say you did this work and you didn't. And Katie, you've had this problem even with in managing people, when someone hands you a report and you ask them what's in it, they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not a new problem. Like, AI didn't create that problem. A lot of people in general are just sort of on autopilot. So they'll follow the process, they'll put the numbers together, they create the dashboard, they create the deck, and you say, okay, great, tell me about it. Well, I don't know what's in it. I just pulled the numbers and put it in. Like, that's not an AI problem. AI is exacerbating the problem because it's taking out the step where the human actually has to pull the numbers and put the deck together. So basically, you're paying someone to push a button and still not know what's in it. And I think that, again, that's not an AI problem. AI is exacerbating the problem. The problem is the education around the information, the data. So, you know, uh, when when we worked with the teams, and I would say, well, based on the data that you're seeing, like, which channel should we focus on? And they would go, what's a channel? And it's like, well, literally it's in the report that you just gave me that we're about to send to the client, and we need to tell the client something that they should do. And like, I know the answer, but I'm trying to help you know the answer as well. They're like, oh, well, this one's the biggest. I'm like, okay, well, that one's the biggest, but is that one the most expensive? Is that one the most resource? Like, and really trying to help people think through critically. And I think that that's not a problem that AI created. That is just truly a lack of curiosity and a lack of education about what it is that you're doing. So you can follow a process. That's great. I want people who can critically think about the process that they're doing.
Right. And so when it comes to the use of AI detectors, that becomes, the detector then becomes a part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Part of the solution is you're not encouraging people to think. You're not asking them to think critically, which is basically metacognition. Think about your thinking. You're instead saying, I want to see 10x productivity out of you. And they're like, I'm going to use AI for everything because you want 10x more stuff coming out of my desk.
You never should have given this to me, Chris.
Absolutely. I did give you more than
one. You gave me a whole pack of them. Yes.
We kind of a multi-flag.
I'm going to have just we using them everywhere. And that's the thing is
like Wolverine gloves with like 8 of them.
AI didn't create the problem of people not using their brains. AI amplified the problem of people not using their brains.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing too in that, for large publicly traded companies, the idea of a dashboard or report is assembling information that people can see. But in mid-sized or smaller organizations, a lot of times a report or a dashboard, that's not the goal. The goal is gathering that data and figure out what is really happening in the outside world. You can deliver this dashboard, but the executives, like, you're going to come in and say, okay, what does this really mean though? And that's the important part of it. It's not just cranking out a report. It's using that data. And it's interesting because it's a very different approach on how to use AI. I mean, you could still use AI to figure out what's going on in the real world, but that's not the same as cranking out another dashboard.
Yep. And this is the thing that we've been saying all along, but people really aren't heeding, so to the question, will AI take my job? It's AI is going to take those tasks. So AI can create the report, but you have to, the way we position is like, you have more time to do the critical thinking. You have more time to do the human things. Now you're not bogged down 30 of your 40 hours a week creating reports. Now you have 40 hours to think about what does the report say and what do we want to do about it. But that's not happening.
Yep.
And I don't have a good solution for that, but that's what we're seeing. And so, people who are using these AI detectors, they're like, oh, well, this is AI, so I'm going to discredit this person, or this is AI, so it's garbage. They're not digging in deeper to figure out, like, is it really, or why am I even trying to detect whether AI was used?
Yep. And if you want to mitigate the strongest tendencies of AI, give it a list in jargon, in linguistic jargon, of the things you don't want it to do. Some examples, as we said, negative parallelism, anaphor abuse, triadic rhythm or tricolonic rhythm, sentences that don't contribute meaning. Like, you can actually tell a machine, cut any sentence that does not meaningfully advance the narrative. And I did this the other day, and like 30% of the text just vanished. Like, well, all right. Clearly you were things. Uniform staccato is a popular one. Rhetorical Q&A, because AI love to say, the result, devastating. Nobody asked you. Nobody asked you for that. So make a list of the things that you in particular don't like, or that you say, you know what, AI, you're overusing this. Ask the AI, what specific linguistic feature is this, such as negative parallelism, and then say, and make yourself a nice little rules thing that can go into a skill or a plugin or GPT or gem, and say, don't do these things, and check your work. Score the number of times you use each of these things in the document, and then remove them. And you will take care of the worst things that you don't like about AI. And if nothing bothers you about AI writing, carry on.
Makes sense.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, today's human statement is take heed. Heed. That's human. That's not AI.
I used a phrase in the LinkedIn post earlier. I'm like, I'm surprised nobody even commented on it. No AI would ever say that, but we'll save that for another time. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we will talk to you all on the next one. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.